Hello there, and welcome to Myton Kids. Last week we learnt about the dramatic collapse of the walls of Jericho. I love that story. I think it's something to do with the noise, but also the trumpets that are blown. God had promised his people a new land of their own, and now he'd helped them enter it. We learnt that God gave them a really special promise. He told them, "I will always be with you, and I will never ever leave you. If you do what I say, your lives in the new land will be happy and everything will go well." And we also learned that the people promised to obey God and do what he tells them. Today, we find out if the people keep their promise to God.
Our God is so amazing. His love is never ending, beyond imagination. He's worth our celebration. He deserves the loudest noise. I don't know about you, but I came here today to celebrate God in every song we sing and every game we play. We celebrate God, always amazing. His love will never end. So everybody in this place, celebrate God.
Now, I've got two presents here. I'm going to get Andy to choose one of them. So, I've got this present and I've got this present. I wonder which one he'll choose. Hey, Andy, I've got some presents for you. Come and have a look.
Oh, brilliant. Presents?
Look,
For me? Both
two-
of them?
Two presents, but the challenge is you're only allowed to choose one to open.
Only one?
Only one.
Right, let's see then. This one's a bit tatty, quite small, it's quite light. I don't think there's anything in it. This one, beautifully wrapped, nice and shiny, big, it's quite heavy. I'm going to go with this one. So I open it and see what's inside. A jelly baby. Right, because Naomi tricked me with those presents, I've made her some cakes. But one's got a special surprise ingredient in. Let's see if she can find which one. Naomi!
Andy, oh, cake!
Yeah, I've made them all for you.
Ooh.
And you've got to choose one which you want to eat. And I've made them all myself, and
Yep.
a special surprise ingredient in one of them, especially for you.
A surprise ingredient. Is that going to be good or not? Now, vanilla, raspberry, chocolate. I think I'm going to have the chocolate
I
one.
thought you might.
Yes. Oh, that's not chocolate. That's Marmite. Oh.
Thought you might like it. You either love it or hate it.
The teeny weeny true king. God's people had a new land. Now they wanted a king. But God is your king, Samuel told them. He is the one who looks after you best. We want a real king, they said, one we can see. God knew that a king might not be kind to his people and look after them as well as he would. But God's people didn't care. They wanted a king, and they wanted him now. So God gave them a king. He was called Saul, and he seemed like a good king at first, but he became proud and he stopped listening to God. He didn't obey God or love God with his whole heart. Saul can't help me with my plan, God said. I need a king who loves me and will teach my people to love me. I need a true king. God had just the one in mind. Go to Bethlehem, God told Samuel. You will find the new king there. Samuel's job was to listen to God and tell the people what God said. So Samuel went to the little town of Bethlehem. God told Samuel to go to Jesse's house. God was going to choose one of Jesse's sons to be the new king. Jesse had 7 strong sons. Now, in those days, if you were going to be the king, you didn't have to be the richest or the cleverest, although that was always nice. You had to look like a king, which meant you had to be the tallest and the strongest. So you could carry the longest swords and the biggest armour and defeat everyone. And it didn't hurt to be handsome either. Samuel asked Jesse to bring each of his sons in turn. So Jesse brought the eldest, tallest, strongest son. This must be the new king, Samuel thought. He looks like a king. But God didn't choose him. You're thinking about what he looks on the outside, God told Samuel, but I'm looking at his heart, what he's like on the inside. So Jesse showed Samuel his next oldest, tallest, strongest son. But God didn't choose him either. In fact, God didn't choose any of the 7 sons. Samuel said, "Is that all?" Jesse laughed. "Oh, well, there's the youngest one, but he's just a weakling of the family. He's only teeny. Bring him," Samuel said. Jesse's youngest son came running up, and God spoke quietly to Samuel. "This is the one." His name was David. "He has a heart like mine," God said. "It is full of love. He will help me with my secret rescue plan. And one of his children's children's children will be the king. And that king will rule the world forever." Samuel anointed David's head with oil, which was a special way to show that you were God's chosen king. "You will be the new king one day," Samuel told him. And sure enough, when he grew up, David became king. God chose David to be the king because God was getting his people ready for an even greater king who was coming. One day, God would say, "Go to Bethlehem. You'll find the new king there." And there, one starry night in Bethlehem, in the town of David, 3 wise men would find him.
In today's story, Saul has been chosen to be king. But why did the people want a king?
Well, they wanted a king to lead them like every other nation had. They'd forgotten their promise to God that he was leading them. They'd forgotten that God had helped them by rescuing them from Egypt and getting them into the promised land. They'd forgotten that God was helping them fight their battles. Now they wanted a king to fight them for them.
And so Samuel was sent by God to help choose the king. Samuel was a prophet, and that means that he is given information by God to pass on to the people. Because of this special job that Samuel had, he knew that God was really the people's king, but the people wanted somebody that they could see, touch.
So God gave them a king. God heard his people's crying out to them, and he sent them Saul. He seemed like a good choice at first. He was leading the people, he was fighting their battles, he was winning battles, he was following God's plan. But then he stopped listening to God, he stopped obeying God, he became proud, and he just didn't listen to God anymore.
And God told Samuel to find a new king who loved God. God was going to choose him And God told Samuel to go to a little town called Bethlehem.
Bethlehem. Oh, I know a song with that in.
Yes.
Oh, little town of
No.
Bethlehem. How she...
Stop. Too early in the story and in the year.
Oh, okay. But Samuel was sent to Bethlehem and to the house of a man called Jesse, who had 7 strong sons.
Samuel and Jesse lined all of the sons up, oldest to youngest. And Samuel went to the oldest son and looked at him and thought, "You are tall and strong. You must be the one that God wants to be king."
No, said God.
Oh. Samuel moves on to the second son, looks at him and thinks, "You are powerful and good looking. You must be the one God wants to be king."
No, said God. And God said no to all of these 7 sons. He told Samuel, "I'm looking at their heart. I'm looking at their inside. I want someone who loves me." God wanted the new king to love him and obey him and serve him, like Saul had stopped doing. He needed a new king to have a heart like his.
Okay, but we haven't found our king yet.
Oh, Samuel asked Jesse, "Have you got any more sons?" And you know what? He remembered. He's got a youngest son who's out looking after the sheep in the field.
And Samuel says, "Bring him here." And so David comes in from looking after the sheep, comes off the field, and he's the youngest and the smallest of the brothers. But God whispers to Samuel,
"This is the one. Anoint him." God knows that David's heart loves him, and he knows that David will help the people love God as well. God's heart is full of love for God.
And a lot of the time, we look on the outside at things and people, and we make up our minds about how things look. It's just like the presents and the cakes earlier. So we can't tell what's on the inside, really, by just having a look. That reminds me, what was in the little present?
Ah, well, if you'd open the little present, then you would have got a £10 note. Oh dear. Now today's song reminds us that man looks on the outside, but God looks on the heart. Those are the words and those are the actions. See if you can all join in. Man looks on the outside, God looks on the heart.